This is a subscriber-only episode. Good evening, and welcome to Dan Bain's Sleepytime Mumbles, the podcast you can't miss. I'm Dan Bain, and every episode I improvise a low-stakes podcast for you to fall asleep to. Friends, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little overwhelmed with my current project at the moment. And so I look to the podcasts that I listen to and realize, it's totally acceptable to just republish an old episode if you can't get it together for whatever reason. So here is the ultimate in old episodes. This is the very first episode of Sleepytime Mumbles there ever was. Listener mail. Let me tell you, friends, I thought I was pretty funny when the very first episode of a podcast was responding to fictional listener mail, dropping us in media res, so to speak. Until recently, this episode has only been available to subscribers, but I release it unto you all now because of poor time management. But if you would like to access more than 50 other episodes, feel free to subscribe. If you don't have $1 to your name, you can still support the podcast by leaving a 5 golden stars review wherever you have the ability to leave 5 golden stars. But not now. That can wait. For now, put down your phone, turn off your screens, close your eyes. Now it's time for a recurring dream to mumble you to sleep. This episode, we're going to be dipping into the mailbag and reading out some listener mail. I'm always so thrilled and excited to receive mail from listeners, and every now and then it's great to take a look back at some of the mail that we've received about the Sleepytime Mumbles and share them with you. So, Our first piece of listener mail comes from Karen. Karen writes, on your Christmas episode, you mentioned your special Christmas log that you like to make at Christmas as a gift for people over that festive time. You're right, Karen. I do like to do that. She continues, would you be willing to share the recipe for all of your listeners? Of course I would, Karen. I don't have it on me right now, but I'll just try and remember it off the top of my head. Here I go. First of all, you're going to need a packet of ginger nuts. These are a hard, gingery biscuit known for their ability to soak up tea or coffee. They're a dunking biscuit. You're also going to need, and this is probably the critical ingredient, you're going to need some figs, some dried figs. I don't know how they were dried, but that doesn't really matter. They just need to be dried figs. I've never tried it with fresh figs, but I think you'll find the dried nature of them is essential. You'll want about 200 grams of those. You're also going to need 250 grams of chocolate. Now, I prefer a darker chocolate with a high cocoa content, but your mileage, that might vary. I don't want to tell you you're doing it wrong, Karen, if you use a lighter chocolate, a sweeter chocolate. But I do feel like you're doing it wrong. You're also going to want 75 grams of butter. And finally, and most Christmassy, you're going to want some brandy. Here's what I do. I cut up the figs, soak them in the brandy, break up the ginger nuts. You can do this by hand if you're strong, or if you're not, or you don't want the labor, you can do it in a blender. Either works. While your figs are soaking in the brandy, you're going to melt that chocolate with the butter over a low heat. This is going to smell delicious. Into that, you're going to add a tablespoon of golden syrup. This is creating the wet mix, or the binding agent. pour your broken up ginger nuts into the wet mix. Oh, and also I forgot about this. This is why I should have read it and not just tried to remember it. You're also going to chop up some walnuts. Chop them up. Chop them up roughly. And then you're going to add them to the dry mix. That's the ginger nuts and the walnuts. Add that into the wet mix. Take a grinder, grind a little salt, not too much now, just a little. And for a final touch of Christmas, sprinkle some cinnamon in. Yeah, mix that all up. Then add those figs and mix them. Mix it all up. Now you've got a big figgy chocolate ginger nut mess. Put that in the fridge and let it set. Later on, get it out of the fridge. Let it get a little soft, because now you're going to make it into logs. Little logs or big logs. Either or, doesn't matter. Don't let the recipe tell you what to do. You're the master of your own destiny, big or small. Then roll them in icing sugar. That's my recipe, Karen. That's how it goes. That's how you make my festive Christmas logs. I like to wrap them in some paper and then tie them up with a bit of string at the end in a nice little bow. Then I'll put them in a container on Christmas Day. I give them to people. That's what I do. That's how I show my Christmas spirit. How do you like to show your Christmas spirit? Send your answers in. Thanks, Karen. I always love to hear from my listeners. Time for another piece of listener mail. This piece of listener mail is from Simon in Papua New Guinea. Simon writes, I love to go to sleep. Do you love to go to sleep? That's a good question, Simon. I do. I think it's a good time. Here's the next piece of listener mail. This listener mail is from this piece of listener mail has been handwritten and posted to me, snail mail, and the handwriting is bit messy. Here's me trying to read it. Dear Dan, I am writing to you to ask when you will be doing more episodes about bread. We're looking forward to partnering with some other podcasts to continue my in-depth exploration of the world of bread. We'll be traveling around the world, going from place to place, all sorts of bread-based cuisines and cultures, and exploring the cuisines of those cultures. Then this is important, if those cultures have some sort of bread or bread equivalent. It's not just carbs. It's not called the Carbs Review. It's called the Bread Review. That is the enabling constraint that we put on our reporting. I still can't read your signature. I think it says Christopher, but it might say Crying Gopher. I think it's probably Christopher. Time for our next piece of listener mail. This piece of listener mail comes from Julie Andrews. Not the Julie Andrews, she says. Laugh, laugh, wink emoji. Julie writes, over the years, the long years I've been following your podcast, I've noticed that the quality is erratic at best. Is there something you could do to make sure all your worst episodes are as good as your best episodes? That's a great question, Julie. And can I just say, I loved you in The Sound of Music. Oh, sorry, that wasn't you. My mistake. Julie, I'm trying my best here. I always think it's maybe better to concentrate on the things that you love rather than focus on the things that you don't love. So I'm really glad to have you as a listener, but part of that compact of you being a listener is that if you can't accept me at my worst, probably resent me at my best. That's the saying. I've got another piece of listener mail here. This piece of listener mail is delicately scented with the smell of freshly cut thyme and is in an envelope. I love to open an envelope with my ornate letter opener, the handle brass, the blade chrome, the history of it unknown, but purchased at a second-hand store by my grandfather, passed on to me as my birthright. Every time I open a letter, be it a personal piece of correspondence or a bill, I feel connected to my heritage, for I come from a long and proud line of people who love receiving letters. Most people love receiving letters, and I am part of that. Let's think for a moment about the humanity we all share in our love of receiving letters. As I slide the wafer-thin writing paper out of this envelope, I'm met with a second scent, freshly cut grass, springtime. This is a letter from springtime, from some other part of the world, I imagine, where right now the rosemary is in bloom and the grass is needing to be cut. The writing is irregular, letters cut out of a magazine, making it impossible to ever identify the nature of the writer through any sort of handwriting analysis. In which I am not an expert. Dear listener, you've gone to a lot of trouble to disguise your identity. But just so you know, I was probably never going to be able to work it out anyway. I hope you don't feel like you've wasted your time. The letter reads thusly: Dear Dan, I enjoy your Sleepytime Mumbles. Sometimes they are a bit interesting. Could you please be less interesting? Yours forever, Anonymous. Well, Anonymous, I try my best. Sometimes, however, a small flicker of something interesting passes through my mind, but I do my best to suppress it. And you can rest assured in the fact that I'm never saying anything of consequence. You can just drift away knowing you're safe in the knowledge that nothing I say is worth being awake for. It's all just mumbles. But, dear Anonymous, know that every word I say is for you. It's popular when creating media to think, who is the ideal listener, reader, viewer, taster, sniffer of what I am making, and know, dear Anonymous, that rather than being general, I am being very specific, and that specific person is you. Almost time to wrap up today's listener mail episode, featuring many pieces of listener mail from the long history of this podcast. This listener mail comes via the internet. Hi Dan, long time listener, first time writer. I'm writing with regard to your recommendation about the wooden blocks you bought for your nephew's birthday. On your recommendation, I bought them for my cousin's 7th birthday. So far, we have made a car, a train, a dinosaur, a bus stop, a combine harvester, and a lemonade stall. However, we're now running out of imagination. What did you and your nephew make out of your blocks? Your fan, Caroline Mascarpone. Thanks, Caroline. I'm glad you enjoyed the recommendation. I always like to think of imagination as an infinite resource. It doesn't ever really run out. Sometimes, though, it needs a little topping up. What if you tried combining some of those combinations that you've already tried? A lemonade stand, that's also a bus stop. A combine harvester, that's also a dinosaur. Combinations like this activate the imagination. If there was a dinosaur that was also a combine harvester, what does that mean? Is there also a dinosaur that's a tractor? And have we just created the conceit for 1960s children's animation, the Flintstones? That's all the time we have for this episode. But we look forward to mumbling you to sleep again in the near future. But as for now, good night.